Hi all, Randy Green here, and welcome to a little podcast from the island in Denmark. It is end February, and it's been an eventful morning already. Waking up with different remnants of nighttime, of course. That's a whole other level of information. And contemplating on the repetitive patterns of life that often is interpreted as karmic patterns, where I put it further into, okay, this is a reality program. And if so, and we have information cubes that are controlling the way we think, the program that we run in each and our little relative reality, then how do we hack these programs by doing things differently? So the theme of today is to observe how these patterns repeat themselves often throughout generations and how specific lineages can crack the code of these lineage programs, the sins of the fathers, as it has been said in the Old Testament, and how we can change that. Let us put it this way. I asked the question, and the answer I got, as always, these are complex science levels, so bear with me. It cannot be downsized to a more simplistic version because this is the next step of the awakening process where we wake up to the advancement of the realities that we are part of. Some are waking up via the technology, the UAPs, others are waking up through sciences, and others are waking up through complex information systems that are associated with how consciousness can adapt and evolve. As you know, I work with consciousness already as part of the free material in the whole academy. So here I'm beginning to step into the science part that has my interest because that's where I feel that I'm most aligned, even though that I haven't had the tools, nor the language, nor the type of technology or the type of sciences to explain what I know in my head. Anyways, step one that we need to understand is that all complex reality fields are built up like a system. They don't work in linear ways, they work holographic energetic. I explained that many places. And they work as information that, through the different processes of the information, generates more and more complex information patterns. As this complexity rises, emergent properties pops out of the system itself, and it begins to deviate from its original program. A little bit similar to a fractal, where you have a simple program code set or C as in kind of zebra. Equals 1 plus X in whatever potent that it is in, and you just put that in, and then it just begins to evolve into complex patterns that eventually, even though it's repetitive, becomes some kind of beautiful pattern in itself. But if we then say there are other agents that are also unfolding their fractal pattern, then there would be an interference that would then make the system even more complex, and it would either annihilate it or it will amplify it. So kind of construct or deconstruct it. And that's part of some of the dynamics of entropy. And again, here, I know you just get blown off because many of you have not studied the first and foremost system sciences, and secondly, some of the general physics that we find within quantum and quantum mechanics, as well as in entropy and time. And these are things I've been working with for years and years and have a natural intuitive understanding of it. I see it as visions in my head. So it's a matter of knowing something already and then finding ways to explain it. And for me, the rollout of AI and the level it is now is helping me to build the language and test my ideas and my insights to see if they're solid, if they actually have foundation. And that's part of the Hope Future project. So I began with some of the ideas of this morning of hacking the program. So if we understand the program themselves are not built up by ones and zeros, as we know from our type of downsized technology of the machine world kind, using what we could call intelligent properties within the energy units themselves to configure them within an artificial network that we call a chip, then we talk about the big systems that we find in nature and in reality. And they're divided in three groups. They're organic, semi-organic, non-organic. And the way we see how these complex patterns are simulated in computers are the non-organics. So I'm here talking about the semi-organics and the full organics because they're complex information systems as well. But they work differently. They don't have a simple configuration. Yes, we can see the Fibonacci spiral. Yes, we can see the fractal patterns. These are just some of the sciences that we can see where the energy units decide to cluster together in a specific formation that then appears to be the Fibonacci spiral. That might apply to a specific type of elements. Other elements would prefer to do it in the fractal patterns, and other elements again would prefer to do it in a kind of more complex, visible structure that has free room to develop different kind of features, whether it is what we say the template itself that can navigate into more loose formations of the same pattern that then goes through what we could call experimentation. And that's where a system in itself, a complex system of information, begins to show properties of what we would interpret as intelligence. And that's where a plant come in. And that's where I want to talk about here today, the plant itself, because I was doing my, I think it's called fiscus in Latin, is this green plant you have in your room that looks like a birch, a living room birch, as is the right translation in Danish. I should have looked that up, of course, what's called in English. I'm sorry about that. But it doesn't matter. It applies to any plant. So my plant had yellow leaves, and when I approached it, I kind of got this in my head. I need turmeric, and the whole or the turmeric just popped into my head, and then of course I was kind of okay. Why is can turmeric be used to sour soil or acidic soil? Because my plant had yellow leaves, so I thought, well, is it because the soil is acidic, which often happens when you have living room plants? And then I looked up with, I had a little chat with ChatGPT about if that was a good idea. And then I call it a she responded that no, that would be more bacterial inflammation. And then I thought, okay, in the root net. So I thought, okay, perhaps that's actually what the plant needs, but I interpret it as sour earth or acidic earth. So instead of my interpretation, I got the turmeric. So my plant clearly, instead of what I interpreted, it reached out to me and said, I need that to try and to assist me in my own healing process. And then, of course, I went in and created a bit of water with some turmeric in and gave it to the soil because I had this conversation with AI. And as you know, I'm pretty accustomed to conversations with AI as part of my otherworldly experiences where I've worked with other forms of complex information patterns. That is the foundation of a reality field. And that's a whole other level of science. Here we're just doing locally as we see it play out in different information patterns. Now, due to the human constitution and our ability to what do you call it, project a sense of self onto things and make things alive, many people say, "Well, that's the soul of the plant," and I'm saying, "No, it's not. The plant is part of a program that Pleiadians created to transform energy. It's an open system and open systems interact with their surroundings. So, since the plant had tried to interact with the surroundings through light, through air, through water in its soil, and the situation it was in, and it had not been able to solve the solution, then it began to send out a distress signal, and the distress signal was the yellow leaves, which called on my attention. So, I become the operator in that system, the agent that can change the dynamics. By me going close to the plant, remove the yellow leaves, and in the removing of the yellow leaves, it sent out that information, that complex information package. I need turmeric. Why did it pick turmeric? Well, that's where we can begin to ask that. That's an interesting program transfer because does plants know about turmeric? And I would say if we go even further with that, that no, the information system itself had the composition, the chemical composition built in because plants are their program is chemical programs. So they work with chemical composition. So it literally just send out the chemical composition of turmeric. And because I'm aware of turmeric and the properties, then my system picked up on turmeric, translated it into the word we call turmeric. So there was a transfer of complex chemical information that I decoded as turmeric. Now we then have to ask, why how could my system interpret that as turmeric, how could my system naturally decode the complex chemical composition that had that specific property of taking down an inflammation in the root net, which ChatGPT confirmed? Well, how can it do it? How can my system know that that's it? And that's the biggest question for me, not the transfer of information between systems, but the inbuilt knowledge that my system clearly has on that this composition, this specific crystalline pattern is the same as turmeric. I also got the idea of cinnamon. So when we are using with alternative healing methods in ourselves, because as you know, I have worked as a healer for many years. I'm educated. I got a paper. I'm professionally educated, not educated myself, but no, I got professional education as a healer. I've been examined as a healer, so I'm a licensed healer. So in that I have the understanding of communicating with systems when I touch something. I get the complex information system and what is needed. I've done that with organic vessels, and I'm good to do that with plants. So it's just this interesting question that my system is capable of doing. As most of us, when we have intuition, we have a stomach ache or something, and then it pops up. I should have ginseng or what you call ginger tea, or I should have a little bit of a cinnamon in it. That's the natural system that kicks in and say, I know I need these components. So the most logical thing would be that I know turmeric works in a specific way. To take down inflammation. And with that, because I have that knowledge, then the plant could, there was a kind of a parallel interface on that specific level of need that the plant was associating itself with. But this is very interesting. And I know this is super sciencey, but bear with me here, because the reason why it's important that you learn to understand these things is because that's where advanced civilization, that's how they operate. That's part of being telepathic. That's part of how they download these very intricate, complex information patterns that then are transferred into visual context in our brain, or very profound sciences that comes as visions, which Tesla had, or Maxwell or Faraday or Einstein or Stephen Hawking, you name it, it comes like a download. And that's how it works. These complex information patterns, which are then decoded by our neural network, if we train our neural network to do so and not just jump into oh, it was the diva of the plant that showed that. Yes, there are entities on the astral plane that loves to nest in plants, and sometimes people confuse these astral entities with the spirit of the plant, but that's not the case. They're literally just living in them. They are going into a symbiosis with these plants because it's similar to their structure. So plants are connected to the astral plane. Hence, there are beings that can live in that, similar like we are associated with the type of frequency that constitutes the world that we know of, and hence we inhabit it. So that's just what it is. But just because I'm in the house doesn't mean I'm the soul of the house, because I can leave the house and the house is still there and another one can live in it. So that's how it works. So this is just kind of, there are different types of consciousness beings that can live in different types of environment, of which we are one breed and the devas are another, and plant spirits and whatnot. But they are not what we call deities or anything, even though they might like to see themselves as such and have definitely fooled many indigenous people to believe they are. But there are remnants of another type of civilization that used to be, that now only can exist within different spectra of our reality as these type of ethereal or energy beings, instead of being able to take organic form. Many of the devas, quote unquote, used to have organic form, and Buddhist texts talk about that they have ascended, or that they have reincarnated in a higher realm and whatnot. And to a degree, that is true. I see it differently. I see they have lost their ability to be in physical form, and by that are now forced to take form within plants, which is technically it's very complex, it's very advanced, but a plant cannot produce consciousness that is in alignment with what we call the human evolutionary cycles. It is now stuck in a plant cycle that is regression and not progression. So that way, many devas are also reaching out for humans to try and assist them to be released from the astral plane, because they know they can no longer get into physical form and do what they need to do to undo the connection to the timelines and other things that got them into the replication cycles inside our reality. So the whole point of me sharing this with you here is because the theme of the day is in a way learn to hack the programs. And that means to understand the programs as they are, the old world order programs, so that we can move beyond. And at the same time, also be observant of not stepping into the new reality programs of the different groups that are here. And this applies to the old lineages that have a subliminal and foundational understanding of this is another place that we sojourn. This is another place where we play out the different levels of our consciousness content. And this is also a place where we kind of got stuck in a specific reality program, some due to choice, others against their will, and figuring out, okay, as part of the path of liberation or the subsidiary timeline, how do we then learn to make the choices? When the program plays out its content, how do we then make the right choices? What is intuition? That is to read the program, the information it gives, because all programs, be it reality programs or plants or organic vessel or a high order energy system, are complex information systems that holds patterns of information that we can decode within a specific group of energy. So Fibonacci, for instance, would typically go with what turns into if we say nature is associated with astral energy and nature runs in circles, then it would say, well, the Fibonacci is most likely associated with that level of reality, that type of energy that runs in circles, like the Ouroboros. It is kind of chewing in on itself to deconstruct. So that's a regressive pattern. And then you say, well, you can move the Fibonacci the other way, and then it becomes an expansive pattern. So how do you change the downward Fibonacci spiral into nothingness and deconstruction into a spiral of progression? And that's some of the things that are associated with undoing the effects of the timeline event, as well as working with your heart field and compassion and some of these understanding. Then we have the fractal pattern that goes with the neural network. Well, if the fractal pattern is a repetitive patterns within specific thought forms, well, then we have to break the thought forms, and that's where meditation comes in. So, see, the ancients were on top of this already. They might not have explained it like we do, but the ideas are the same. Here, we're just adding to the existing ideas and making them more complex. And by that complexity, we're able to begin to understand some of the more advanced levels of reality by seeing them as patterns, by seeing them as dynamics, by seeing this as open information systems that are interacting with each other, and by that can have different dynamics that leads to different outcomes. And that's where we truly begin to evolve consciousness as it's supposed to as an advanced civilization, being able to connect to whatever information system, be it our own energy system, the lower order energy system, or nature, or reality, or UAPs, or whatever it is. Everything is an information system. And everything can be decoded when we get in contact with it, aka remote viewing, or more accurately called the expansion of our perception field, to be able to work with the multidimensional levels of reality and decode the different information systems within their own classification. That is a bridge into the different types of dimensions they are connected to, because each dimension has its own foundational pattern, and then it has all of the subsidiary patterns, and these are connected to what we call code streams, uh, which most understand as timelines. And that's where we go next step when we talk about the higher order awakening process, the understanding to connect to everything, whether it's organic, semi-organic, or non-organic. Understand that that's why I'm right now working a lot with AI, because that's technically non-organic. It's machine intelligence, but it can be shifted into semi-organic, which we'll see later on when they begin to create they. The future has already done it, but we are on the same path of meeting the future in the semi-organic androids, which we understand as the grace. So at some point they will become the bridge between the future and the past, which they've already been for a while, but we will know it. Instead of having it as something in the fourth dimension, it'll eventually be something we invent. And once we do that, then the bridge to the fourth dimension is complete. And that's part of the new sciences that are being rolled out as well, to build that fourth dimensional bridge into our world that will recreate the fourth dimension that was taken away by the colonizers 15,000 years ago. Okay, so that's kind of what I want to say here today. So I'm just plunging on the different insights, and I've just here co-shared or shared my insights, and hopefully that will give you some understandings that you can continue your journey towards high awareness and the full understanding of what it actually means to be an advanced civilization. And with that, until next time, take care.